You saw that last
That's
trailer.
one of the 3 pillars of this E3. Actually, there's 4. There's 4 pillars. It's mechs, samurai.
Yeah, true.
Gay. And what was the other one?
Beating dudes.
Beating up dudes.
Beating your dudes.
Beating your dudes. I think there was another one. Oh, February 22nd.
February 22nd.
The 4th pillar
the
of
fourth
E3.
pillar.
All right, Ubisoft. We're going to keep on moving.
Yeah.
Ubisoft kicks off the way Ubisoft always kicks off. People
Oh,
dancing.
sorry. It was Americana. Like country ass.
Oh,
like
yeah, I guess
country
that's-
road, country stuff. Okay.
Oh, Country Road, Take Me Home.
Yeah. All right, I'm sorry. I interrupted.
To the place I belong.
Oh, right. West Virginia.
Country Roads, Take Me Home. Just Dance. They were dancing to that song 100%. They were dancing to Finesse.
That
they were
would've
dancing
been
to some
good.
bops. There were some bops.
Just
with
like
that.
some slow, like...
And then I'm glad we rushed through everything else because we have some. Like, we finally have a thing to like dig into a little bit here. Beyond Good and Evil 2 was shown. There was a like a CGI trailer that revealed that was a cool trailer of like a spaceship trying to escape a planet as like asteroids, the enemy ships, and then what's the pig's name from the first game? I never beat that game.
Bijou?
that sounds closer than what anything else we're going to get to.
Paul.
No.
Bijou?
What?
I looked at Natalie.
Natalie?
And she went,
please repeat yourself.
What did you say?
Hi, I'm Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul.
It's Paul the Pig!
You know what? I guess that sounds
Paul.
very
That
similar.
sounds
We're
right.
just going to call him Paul.
Paul. And he's like, oh no, it's you, Jade. That's how Paul sounds. Oh no, Jade, it's you. You're a space pirate now. I didn't know that.
I'm still a pig.
Yeah, I'm still a pig.
My name's still
I think
Paul.
I think it's a prequel to that game, though.
No, they announced it as a prequel.
But was Jade a space pirate in that
don't
game?
know.
She was a journalist.
Maybe she used to be a space pirate.
Oh,
Does anyone
she was
remember
doing
how
both.
that-
Look, it's the gig economy. She needed to get her money doing
Yep, you're
something.
right.
You know, journalists don't get paid super well a lot of times. She was
I
a
love
freelance.
this
She was a
idea.
contractor.
She was a freelancer, like
You know?
like a pirate freelancer.
Exactly.
Perfect. Awesome.
That fits in really well with
With where we're about to
yeah,
go.
huh.
You're right. So then they showed a little bit of gameplay of like the different, like the
Very
main
little
city.
of the
Very
gameplay.
little. It was like a fleshed out version of the demo I saw last year.
The game still seems like 2+ years away.
Right. Well, they have a lot of content that they still need.
Well.
And they found out. Joseph Gordon-Levitt showed up to explain where they get that content. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, people don't know, is an actor who also runs a group called Hit Record or Hit Record, depending on how you want to read it. I think
Presumably it's hit record because
I
it
always
started
say
as a
re-
video thing.
That's how I've always heard it.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's how I've always said it. I've heard it hit record or hit record.
I'm
Anyway,
okay, sure.
like
yeah.
a hit record.
Does it
you
have,
know what I mean?
But it has like
the
a red,
RNC. I know.
It has a,
I agree. And he comes out and he says, "Listen, for the last few years, we've been doing crowdsourced art on Hit Record." And so, for people who don't know, the way that thing works is they do things like viral videos, or like 1,000 people all play a single note and it turns into a song, and then. Or like, you know, they do a mural, and so like 20 different people design it, and someone goes to build. You know what I mean? Like
That's
it's
cool, yeah.
It is. It's
Oh,
it's a
okay.
cool. I like the notion of distributed creation. I like the notion of collaboration. It's
and a structure for it.
and a structure.
Too. So I think for some
a
people
tool set for
that can that happens naturally for a lot of people, but for I think there are others that having a structure somewhere to point
Now-
towards is helpful.
The way that stuff works traditionally for Hit Record is they put up a project, people submit things for the project, that stuff is either chosen or not. If it's not chosen, there's no money that exchanges hands. It's
Who's
spec
picking it?
work. I think Hit Record is curating most of these projects. Then Hit Record says, okay, well, here is what our profit share is going to be. Patrick, you did the coloring for this comic book.
Sounds about right.
Rob, you did the line work. Danielle, you did the writing. We're going to say that, whatever the percentage, whatever the profit is, you're going to get 2%, you're going to get 4%, you're going to get 10%, or whatever it is.
I like those odds.
And then there's a period during which, after all of that, you can kind of negotiate as a group in a forum type thing where you're like, no. You know what? Patrick needs 3%. That seems more fair. And then you get paid if the thing is profitable. I already have issues with that project, with that model, because the way that works is lots of people are submitting work on Spec. Just go to nospec.com if you want like the very quick and dirty why Spec work is exploitative. But the long and short is that there is lots of value in trying to produce something in terms of idea generation and in terms of like actually doing work on the way to something. when you contract, when you do work, you're doing work to do the work, not to produce the thing. If you go to a factory and you put 1,000 doors on the car, and then down the road, for whatever reason, the wheel part breaks, that person with the doors on still gets paid for putting those doors on because they did their part of the job, right? When you're submitting completed work, as a freelancer, sometimes people will ask you to do that, and there are situations in which I understand why a freelancer would do it. But by and large, freelancers are better off asking for money and getting money. And in some cases, I talked to people today in which you say, like, hey, yeah, I'll submit a demo for this to see if I'm if I'm a fit for this. But that was work. Pay me for that work. And that happens. That is part of the freelance economy. It's part of doing writing tests. It's part of doing music generation, all sorts of stuff. But even that it turns out, is not the model for what Ubisoft, a $1 billion company,
they made $2 billion. Well,
last year, right?
$2 billion in sales. That's not necessarily profit, but they made a lot of money.
We're not. So in this case, here's a big difference between what HitRecord normally does and what Ubisoft normally does. HitRecord does make 12-minute viral videos of people playing music. Ubisoft makes multi-million dollar, $100 million games. Big difference.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's even more
games with huge art asset
needs
creation.
So what they're asking for here,
that's a huge part of all of their games.
What they're asking for here is completed songs for the radio in that game, radio skits and DJ personas and stuff like that for the game, graffiti and posters, things like to make the world feel alive. And unlike the regular hit record segment or process where the money is tied to profit and there is theoretically a kind of open-ended profit share, a royalty system. In this case, it's that HitRecord currently has $50,000 from Ubisoft set aside to then
supposedly there's another line somewhere else that says it could be expanded.
That could be expanded, but starting at $50K is not a lot of money. Right. And I mean, compare that to something like Valve, which paid out millions to TF2 and Dota, like item creators.
Warframe apparently has something similar.
Totally. I think that fan labor is like a really tricky subject. It's one of my favorite subjects to dig into. It's one of my favorite subjects academically. And I think that this stuff is on the spectrum. I do think that there is fan labor that can be compensated and can be compensated fairly. I think that when you start adding things like spec and caps and you remove royalties and like bit by bit, you get to something that's like really abrasive and exploitative. But most importantly here, opaque. They did not come out and say, and it's super important to us that we pay our fans. That was on a video that was released by HitRecord late, like after all this announcement came out. Ubisoft didn't front load that, and then it's unclear what that system looks like.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt put out a tweet, to his credit, put out a tweet very quickly saying and it's like explicitly saying we fucked up, like we are going to pay people,
right?
Start taking your quibbles with how they're going to handle all that stuff. His explanation was it was originally in a script. It seems like it got cut. Who knows if that's true or not? Like that, there's no way for us to know, or if that's him just realizing. Like
we
right after the fact, like shit that we actually should have had that in there, and we should have talked about it. So kudos for at least like a quick acknowledgement that we are paying these people to some degree. There is a potential profit to be made from the work being put in there. But yes, like that would have been like it's like if it was cut or was not considered in the first place, like that's a problem. That's up front for the framing and how you're thinking about.
It's back to the passion conversation,
right?
You want to make
$50,000 is peanuts.
It's peanuts. And that's not going to one person. Like, that's going to be cut across a bunch of people who submit stuff. And there will be people... It takes so much time to make a song. It takes so much time. And there's
a thing.
To make anything. To make a design, to make anything that of the sorts of things that they are requesting. But it's so hard for me to imagine a scenario where someone is just like... It's easy to imagine a scenario where people are just submitting this work over and over, hoping to get noticed. And end up
which
with
is also
peanuts in their
understandable.
pocket. I get why an individual who wants to break in would do this. Do you know what I mean? This is not like I'm not throwing the freelancer under the bus who's like desperate for a fucking shot.
But it's also like the labor market and like the exploitative freelance market has created like in some ways for people an insidious mindset where they don't feel like they deserve to be rewarded for this. So like often like what we're talking about here is not like making clear that like if you need to get noticed, if you're trying to break in, you're going to try and find every avenue possible. There's nothing wrong with as long as you're going into it understanding that like I'm doing this because I'm hoping to get noticed. I understand this isn't like the right system, but there's nothing I can do about that.
Right.
But the larger problem is participation in that system just feeling like, oh, that's just the way it is.
Right.
I shouldn't ask for anything different.
Right.
I shouldn't ask for anything more. I am not owed money for labor that is not used in an end product. And it's like, that's the mindset that needs to be, put into people.
Yeah, just as a pertinent point here, how many of us wrote for free?
Yeah, totally.
Like,
Right.
how many of us did this for free?
But there was a moment when what I realized was I could write for free for someone else who's going to make money from it, or I could write for free for myself.
Yeah.
Right.
And we live in a world, and I am saying don't work for exposure, and I'm saying that because if you disagree and you decide to do it, I want my fucking voice in your head saying, I'm gonna disagree with Austin on this one. This one matters enough to me to disagree with Austin on this one. Do you know what I mean?
You have a conversation with head on.
It's a calculated risk.
Yes, the same way that when I disagreed with my parents about something, or my best friend saying don't take that job, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take that job even though you say not to. It made me consider it. My friend saying don't do a thing means something to me, and so I consider it before I do it. I'm saying don't work for exposure. Work for yourself. Work for pay. Not even a bunch of pay. Like, I'm not even saying there are times when what you want to make clear is this is a moment of professional exchange in which it works two ways as a freelancer. If you're not being paid, the person who is your editor or who is your project manager is not going to give your work attention because it doesn't count for anything. Because it doesn't matter to them. It's why I will not run shit for free. Because when I'm paying someone a few $100s to write for us, what I'm saying not only is your work is valuable to me, I'm also entering into a relationship with them and saying I'm going to give myself to you and your work so that it turns out to be as good as it can be.
Because there's not a voice in your head saying, "Well,
right,
I'm going to let this slide because I'm not paying them, and I'm not going to ride their ass for getting exactly what I want.
Exactly.
Even though it's the right thing."
Right, exactly that. And that's on top of all the stuff that you've been talking about lately, Rob. We talked about the Bethesda video yesterday about whether or not the workers, in the commissary are salaried or not. Are they contractors? All of that stuff connects here because at the end of the day, what a technique like this is about getting rid of those fringe costs that having employees includes. Mm-hmm. When you have an artist on staff or a musician on staff, what you have to do is pay
401k.
Benefits. 401k. What else? Insurance.
Not overtime necessarily, but some sort of vacation time,
payroll tax.
Yeah.
Payroll tax. All of these things that companies are supposed to pay and need to pay to keep the economy going and to make sure that their workers are well...
a reason for people to stick around,
totally,
like retention.
Totally, retention, right. But when you can just run through people, this is like the furthest extension of this. This is why the gig economy has blown up, is because companies like Uber don't need to pay those things, and it's cheaper to do that than to have an employee. It's why if you work for Uber, you do not technically work for Uber. You're an independent contractor who happens to have the Uber app on your fucking phone.
Basically outsourcing
within 100%,
another
100%.
And not everyone that's on Uber is just the person who's like, I'm just doing this for a couple extra hours a night because I got some free time. A lot of those people that those people exist, and that's fine. They're entering into an agreement where they know what they're doing. This is extra money on the side in terms of what they do. But for a large amount of people, they are just getting screwed over and exploited because it's their only choice because the labor market's not offering them something so they can enter into an agreement.
It's like a broken fucking cycle. It's really, really rough on the people who are trying to break in and the people who are just trying to provide for themselves. So all of that is to say that that trailer looked really cool, and I really, really wish they'd been more transparent and that they had affirmed that there would be equitable relations with the people who are trying to use this program.
I mean, it kind of soured me. I really liked Beyond Good and Evil, and I worked many years past that, so my memories of why I liked it and what I loved about it are starting to get a little bit fuzzy. There was
photography.
A time, 2 years ago, I knew that pig's name, and now I'm
it's
like,
Paul?
It's Paul. Yeah, I knew Paul's name.
Piju?
You're really close.
Pigby.
Pigby.
That's the English for Piju.
Peter Pigby.
But Beyond Good and Evil.
The thing is, this reveal today, tying that to Beyond Good and Evil 2, is sort of turning this into, in my head, it's like, oh, this is fucked up, exploitative, late capitalism TF2, where it's like, oh, this is a test bed. Right. Now the value of this franchise, because if you wanted to get this thing out the fucking door, it would have been out the door years ago if it was a top priority. But now that it's, as long as we're doing this.
Right. It does not have the Assassin's Creed Odyssey team on it.
Yeah.
As long as we're doing this, you're saying let's see what this does.
Yeah,
see if this works.
Let's see if this works. Let's see what we can get away with.
Right.
And let's see how many people are going to view us using their stuff in their game for a song. How many people are going to look at that it's their golden fucking ticket.
Right.
And it's not just the people who are going, like, giving their labor here for peanuts, basically. Like, you don't have to imagine very far down the road somebody turning to a line environmental artist or a line modeler and saying, like, well, we got the hit record program, like, right here. So what the fuck do I need to give you a raise for?
Right. There is something else here that's so fascinating for me. I spent some time a few years ago writing an essay in a book called Critical Hits about the last game, the final game, the infinite game, right? We've talked about this concept with No Man's Sky. I talked about procedural generation. I talked about the ways in which, in that essay, I kind of was trying to tackle a couple of things. And one of them was, why is it that so many of these final games, so many of these games that turn to procedural generation to build, in an infinite world, actually are building an infinite galaxy? And one of the things was, for me, there was something tied up in this sci-fi notion of the endless exploration of space and that desire for endless leisure, right? You could leave Earth behind. You can leave the dirt and soot behind and go to the stars.
There's always something better.
There's always something better. We don't have to fix what's here. We can just leave and go somewhere else. And technology will save us. And in some ways, my takeaway from that was like, I get the drive for it, but at the same time, the technology is flawed. Rob, you've gone on record recently to talk about the failings of State of Decay 2 and proc-gen storytelling. Here we see the almost darker turn to it, right? This actually reminds me of Yusef's essay on Detroit, right? Which is, the machines don't need to do it for us. We got people to do it. It's cheaper to pay people pennies who are desperate and passionate than it is to actually build the technology that could do that work, or let alone to hire people. So it's almost like you're stepping bit by bit by bit from a system of here's a team of 20, 30, 200, in the Ubisoft case, 800, 2,000 people who are touching this game, to one in which lots of it is proc-gen. We're building tools that build worlds, and then the rest of it is outsourced, is crowdsourced, is paid contract work, pennies on the dollar. And this is not the end of the line for me and Ubisoft, but it is a very important one in which we need to make it clear that this is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with very carefully and that affects people's lives and can shape the direction of the industry going forward.
Isn't it also possible that the only reason Beyond Good and Evil 2 is being made is that it's driven by fans?
Yes.
And that there is an altruistic,
those two things are not incompatible.
That's what I'm gonna say. I think these two paths are not. I think could be in concert with one another. Where they thought, look, the only reason we are lucky enough to make this game is these people would not shut the fuck up about making this game, and so we're getting a chance to do it. And isn't the best other than making a good game, getting them involved, putting their stamp on it. The people that would not shut up on Twitter, would not shut up on YouTube, those people should be in the game. And what if we can also pay them to do it?
Totally.
And those two things, it's a flawed process along the way with consequences that are both unexpected and just not thought through. But I also think I just want to make it
no one's no one needs to be twirling a mustache.
Right. The way the team talks about this game, the way this game has been, everything about it, suggests there is nothing cynical about it. But that doesn't mean that there can't be unintended consequences for trying to fill in the gaps along the way with what you're trying to achieve.
There was a moment when they left that stage today, and you could hear them laughing in this joyous way about how well they delivered the pitch.
Their mic had not been cut.
Their mic had not been cut. And it warmed me. It really did.
The woman came out and said,
coming back to this.
We nailed it.
And she was so
it was
excited.
beautiful.
I had a meeting with her last year to see that stuff. Her joy is infectious. Their love of this stuff is infectious. I keep talking about how much I love hearing developers talk about their games and give me the pitch to their games and can share that joy and their joy and passion. I think joy and passion have a place in game development, as in all artistic endeavors. It's just that joy and passion is not enough. And often in a case like this, I'm not talking about malice. I'm talking about negligence, and I'm talking about the seductivity of convenience. Of sitting in a room and having been told no 3 or 4 times when you pitch this game, and then you go how do we do this? How do we do it? They're telling us we have this much money. There's no way we can build this with this much money.
Okay, now we have to partner with this company.
Right.
Because we can't do it ourselves.
We can't do it ourselves. Right.
Okay.
We don't own it.
How do they handle their stuff? How much are they going to bend the rules on how they already do it?
Right.
You start to see the slippery slope where you end up going well, at least we got it We did.
Yo, we're streaming on Periscope right now on a phone through our own LTE shit. Like, we're speaking from experience on this stuff. I know what it is to meet someone halfway and to be like, all right, well, what is the deal here? We work for Vice. There was a story that ran last night about the history of Vice. We're speaking from experience here. And
we're in compromised positions by still working for Vice.
And so what I'm saying by that is, like, I get how these things come to be, and this isn't about malice, and it isn't about.
And that's all I wanted to like.
There are times when it's about malice.
There is.
I want to be clear.
Absolutely.
I
just don't think this is one of those situations.
But that to me doesn't make it any less important to
No,
address,
of course,
right?
not. Because it's easier to. That's the insidious rabbit hole that you can go down is you can gloss over. Like, you look at the like this is the other side of passion, right? You look at the passion, and then you start making excuses because if you've worked in an environment where you have to deal with compromise all the time, where you're not given the full resources, you will suddenly look at a person and go, well, I see how you got there, and I get it.
Yep.
And that's why it's almost important to make sure you're just directing the ire in the right direction, which is like without knowing the full story of how it happened, it's better to look at Ubisoft and be like, you're the ones that should be paying up more money.
And systemically, more largely, like, this is about the moment of capitalism that we're in which artistic production is becoming less and less valued, and efforts to automate and decentralize and pay less and less to producers across the labor spectrum are being emphasized. And, like, that is a systemic issue we know for sure. There are cases where the capitalist specific people are shitty as hell,
100%.
right? We can talk about the stories that have been running about Elon Musk wanting there not to be yellow safety colors in his factories.
What?
Oh, did you not hear this?
No.
Oh my god!
We don't have to go.
Yeah.
But like, the short version, why?
He doesn't like yellow.
Oh, fuck off!
Right. So there are situations where it's fuck off that guy.
Yes.
But it's much more often or much more definite a thing to say. That person is almost in a sense produced. They're making choices, but they're also produced by a system.
Yes.
That arranges for that role to exist and for someone to be grabbed and put into it. For someone passionate to be like, oh yeah, I'll make that trade-off. And so this is one of those situations where it's like, on one hand, the joy of them saying, yes, I nailed it, felt good. On the other hand, a second later, it was like, wait a second. How does this shake out in the long run?
Because everybody in that position thinks, I'm making a game. I'm making a game that I'm passionate about. I'm making a game that I'm passionate about. And, maybe some fans can actually help with this. Like, that's the way they might very well be looking at it.
Right.
But of course.
And I wish they just at least mentioned it on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have gone a long
Goes
way.
a long way.
Would have gone a long way to be like, when we're talking about like pillars, what's important, the things that you include and don't include. Like, when it's on yes, maybe Jordan, if we take Jordan Gordon-Levitt at his word, like, maybe it was in the script, but like, that meant Ubisoft as a company, right? Like, we again turn it back to the person who's really pulling the strings on this. Like, Ubisoft chose to cut that from the script. Thank you, Fireworks.
Thank you, Fireworks, or whatever that was.
So maybe that's the end of the discussion.
I guess the thing I would say is, I guess I'm just not as willing to give the benefit of the doubt anymore. Like, I think one of the things that led to just the historical moment we are in is we looked at a lot of things and we're like, well, there's some reasonable explanations for that are not so nefarious. And maybe they were, but, conduct may be founded on the, hard rock or wet marsh, but after a point, I don't give a flying fuck.
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm at when I see something like this. Is that, like, the nefarious thought has occurred to somebody. Like,
someone did not step up and go, whoa, at the very least, right?
Yeah.
Or kept pushing it in a certain direction, knowing that you could settle in that direction.
Somebody is watching to see how this experiment goes very closely.
Right.
Other last thing I'll say is Vivendi never will let this shit happen.
They might
get our billionaires in play.
Okay.
Oh,
Vivendi might have, who knows? Vivendi could have doubled down. Page.
So Page was somewhat.
That was, you were the
closest. Y''J,
Page. Yeah.
Which I believe is space French for Paul. So I think
Right,
interesting.
Space French. I should have learned that in high
Siri.
school.
Yeah, I didn't vote. Yeah, I asked Siri.
Learned Italian instead.
All right, we should keep moving on. We've another couple things, and we'll take a break after that. Does that sound good? All right. Trials Rising. It's a new Trials game. They keep putting those out.
There was this glorious moment where Danica had come back and we're watching it on the couch. We're like, I really liked that first Trials and like maybe played a little bit of another one of those, but I think like I'm like Trials'd out. And then trailer comes up with the release date. It's like PS4, Xbox One, PC, Switch. And it was like, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe I'll play another one of those.
Yeah, that's what it takes.